So, welcome back to Coffee Theology. Today I'm here with Mr. Roger Bai, and we're talking about what actually is theology. So, Roger, what is theology? What does it mean?
Okay. Okay, great being with you. Sorry. Important question. Okay, and there's a kind of a simple answer and a big answer as well. So I'll go with the simple. But if we were to really break the word down, it actually comes from two Greek words. One word meaning God, and the other word actually logos means or the word, and study. So basically,
Awesome.
put those two words together, and you get the study of God. So theology is about getting to know God, to understand God to the extent that we can understand him. Okay, that's an
Awesome.
important rider.
Yeah.
So that's a simple answer.
Fab.
Okay.
And so, a lot of people will switch off as soon as they hear the word
Yeah.
theology because it just sounds complicated. But why is it important?
Yeah.
And is it for everyone? Is it for just theologians? Or
Okay.
what would you say on that?
Okay. Well, confession time. Okay, there would have been a time when I would have switched off. I would have discounted myself. And I'd have thought exactly what your questions are. So I'd have thought, oh, that's just for theologians or whatever.
Yeah.
But quite early on in church leadership, I became convinced that theology is important. In fact, a good friend of mine who's also a church leader spoke to me in those early days when I was young, which I was once.
Yeah.
Okay, really.
I believe you.
I know. Okay, but said to me, every pastoral problem, or almost every pastoral problem you meet, is a theological one.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought, really? Well, all these years on, I would totally agree that, and actually I've now given that advice to many, many other leaders. So it's so important it's obviously important in seeking to lead, be part of a leadership church in helping people grow
Sure.
in their understanding of God, because theology is about us knowing God. But it's not just about leadership as well. And I love the bit in the Bible where Paul, and you read about it in Acts 17, but Paul goes to Berea, preaches the gospel, people get saved, great story. But it says that the people of Berea were of a noble character,
Sure.
and they examined the scriptures daily to see if what Paul said was true.
Wow.
I love that. Can you imagine? Apostle Paul comes into town, preaches the gospel, people get saved, and yet they still want to study the scriptures to find, is this really right? Is this really true?
Sure. Wow.
And so there's, I believe, a call for us. It's not just a leadership thing. It's a call for every one of us to examine the scriptures so our faith is based on what is true.
I love that, a study of God, and that we should look at it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that it's not just for theologians, pastors, but for everyone.
Absolutely, it can. So I think there are scholars that we need. There are people with big brains, which I haven't got. That I would call capital T theologians, and we need them. The church needs those. They're gifted to really study. But actually, we're all called to be small t theologians.
Yes.
All of us.
Love it.
All of us. Okay, and that's where I put myself. But I value what we can learn from others, and then what we can grow in together.
Awesome. So again, coming back to that word theology, it can sometimes put people off because they don't know maybe how to find correct theology, or there's been a lot of controversy. They've found a lot of controversy. How would you say people can know correct theology, and why do we have different theology?
Okay. Right, okay.
Big question.
Big question, okay. Right, in 2 minutes. Okay. Well, the simple answer, in terms of, I go to my exhibit, the simple answer in terms of how do we get our theological understanding, well, it's from the Bible.
Yeah.
And, and I know that's kind of an obvious answer, but it's such an important answer.
Yeah.
Because actually, the Bible to us, it is God speaking to us, is his revealed word. And so that becomes our starting point, but also our finishing point.
Yeah.
And, in terms of how we understand God, how we understand even ourselves, mankind, and God's purposes for the world. So the Bible is the obvious answer. But as well, we are hugely indebted to church history. Throughout church history, again, those capital T theologians, the big brain bunch, the early church fathers, they grappled with, well, what is the Bible really saying? And actually, from the early days in the church, there was false teaching, false doctrine. We read about it in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so you find Paul and Peter correcting some of that. But the early church fathers had to grapple with that as well.
Yeah.
And so you get things like the creeds, the Nicene Creed, which become like a rich distillation of biblical truth.
Yeah.
It's a set. So really theology is a set of biblical beliefs and convictions, and so we owe a lot actually to our church fathers and then even present theologians who continually examine the original text, and so it's the Bible, but also there's a history of theological thought that we learn from as well.
Awesome, thanks Roger. So I have a lot more questions. We're going to do a part 2 if that's okay. But thank you for joining us this time. And if you have any questions about this part of our interview about theology, you can email us at pastoral@kingscc.org, and we'll see you for part 2.